Hello, everyone. Hi, welcome to our winter issue launch event. My name is Catherine Segerson, and I'm the editor of Catamaran, and this is Elizabeth McKenzie, our managing editor. So, we're very proud to be entering our 10th year of publication with this new issue, which is our winter 2022 edition. The first issue of Catamaran came out in the fall of 2012. And as the pandemic continues, we here at Catamaran have found some durable solutions to these challenges, and one of these has been our virtual launch events, which have become pretty popular. And we're so happy that so many people can come tonight. There's 88 people here, and we can hear readings from people all over. We have 12 contributors to the magazine reading tonight, and also, we have a little bit of a grand finale at the our last reader is Charles Hood, and he's going to be doing a reading with a violin interpretation of the words by violinist Rowan O'Neill. So that will be the grand finale. So be sure to stay till the end if you can. And a few things about 2022. We're looking forward to our 9th annual Catamaran Writing Conference, which will be July 31st at the Stevenson School in Monterey. We will be bringing back our in-person art exhibition with the 2021 and 2022 artists at the Blitzer Gallery in September. And we are hoping to bring back our Poetry Prize celebration in San Francisco at the Historical Museum and include our 2020 and 2021 winners who had virtual launch events along with our next year's winner. So the Poetry Prize is open, so send us your manuscripts if you're interested. And also, we're kicking it off with a toast to Catamaran's 10 years. And this is Equinox Champagne, and they've sponsored our conference for many years. So if you want to try Equinox, they have a tasting room in downtown Santa Cruz. All right. So our first reader tonight is Alison Luterman. Alison Luterman is a poet, a playwright, a lyricist, and a teacher living in Oakland, California. She's published 4 books of poetry, the most recent of which is In the Time of Great Fires, which was the winner of the 2020 Catamaran Poetry Prize. She also writes personal essays and has published an ebook called Feral City. And the poem she's reading for you tonight was the winner of the Morton Marcus Poetry Contest this year. So please welcome Alison Luterman.
Hi, am I on the air? Hi, nice to see you. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. I'm going to read Season of the Sonnets, which I wrote about a time in my life when I belonged to the Boston Theater Group in Boston, Massachusetts. It was the early 80s. Things were quite different. And we were doing a show called Crooked Eclipses, a theatrical meditation on Shakespeare's sonnets. So in order to be in this show, I had to memorize many of the sonnets. I was reflecting on that time. Season of the Sonnets. For 6 months, I lived inside of them. Stray lines floated up when I rose early to catch the bus, to catch the train, to catch the other bus that took me to my job. Like as the waves make toward the pebbled shore, or when I lugged clothes to the laundromat, that time of year thou mayest in me behold, or walked with my backpack through the snow down to Bread and Circus to load up on sunflower seeds and yogurt, when yellow leaves or few or none do hang. All those weeks and months in my drab costume of broke 20-something substitute teacher, a girl who cut her own hair in the bathroom mirror, and all the while his words were glints of gold in my mind stream. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? 5 nights a week, I climbed winding stairs of an old church in the Back Bay to arrive finally at the topmost attic under the eaves, where along with a dozen others, our brave band of players, we dive into the sonnets, make them come alive like little plays, which is what they are, glistening, empty fishing nets cast nightly into the ocean of the infinite. And we left everything else at the door, illness, bad bosses, divorce, because theater is a temple, and you don't enter a temple with shit on your shoes. So we'd sweat through our workout, then turn to the poems, those little songs, vowels and consonants and diphthongs, dulcet syllables sliding over lips, teeth, palate, and tongue, till we broke each word down to its essence of sound, speaking gibberish, singing the sweet debate, parry and thrust, marry or die, marry and die, and live forever in language. All that March and April, I'd walk over the Mass Ave bridge from Cambridge into Boston to save the 50-cent bus fare, looking down at the Charles River, where Harvard students sculled, privilege gilding their shapely muscles, and his lines would float up, consumed with that which it was nourished by. Enchanted, melancholy season when I had no boyfriend and Shakespeare was my lover. No stable work, but Shakespeare was my job. I loved him the way a Christian loves Jesus. And I never lost my religion, as decades later, I find one or two, or sometimes a whole glittering seam of his words still shining in my rock-strewn mind, compressed to diamonds by the weight of love and time. Thank you. And that's all, folks.
Thank you, Alison.
Thank you.
Our next reader is Iris Jamahl Dunkle. It's really great to have Iris in the magazine again. Iris wrote the first full-length biography on Charmian Linden, Jack London's wife, entitled Charmian Kittredge Linden, Trailblazer, Author, Adventurer, published by University of Oklahoma Press in 2020. The fourth collection of poems, West, Fire, Archive, was published by the Center for Literary Publishing at Colorado State University in 2022. Dunkle teaches at Napa Valley College and is the Poetry and Translation Director of the Napa Valley Writers Conference. Please welcome Iris Dunkle.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to be here. Wow, I love Catamaran, and it's such a joy. I am kicking off the first chapter of my next biography on Sonora Bab with you guys. So thank you for trusting my work. I'll just read the first 5 minutes of it. This is called Sonora Bab, Challenging a Single Story of the Dust Bowl. In February 1938, 31-year-old Sonora Bab drove up from Los Angeles to meet her new boss, a willowy man in a baggy suit named Tom Collins. The rain beat down on the muddy road as she stepped out of her car and walked briskly up to the Loan Administration Building at Arvin Sanitary Camp near Bakersfield, California. Rows of tents stretched out behind the building. She knocked confidently on its thin screen door. Bab had been a writer for as long as she could remember. She'd written her first piece at age 5, an essay entitled How to Handle Men. At age 22, she left her home in Kansas to pursue a job as a reporter at the Los Angeles Times, only to lose her job before it even started because the stock market crashed. A decade later, she was about to begin an 8-month stint working as a volunteer for the Farm Security Administration in the San Joaquin and Imperial Valleys of California. She'd been encouraged to take the position by the League of American Writers, where she was an active member in Los Angeles chapter of the John Reed Club. The administration building, like all the other permanent buildings of the camp, was half tent and half solid shelter. Arvin was one of the original FSA camps that provided housing, washrooms, toilets, and showers, and a community room for the ever-growing wave of migrants descending on California from the Dust Bowl. Tom answered the door with a half smile as he exclaimed, "Welcome to Arvin, Sonora." Rain drummed on the tin roof as she smiled back and stepped inside. For the next 8 months, Bab would work closely with Collins, providing supplies for the Dust Bowl refugees whose overflowing flivvers or Model Ts crowded the roads. Between 1935 and 1940, over 350,000 impoverished people fled their homes to try and find work in California. Collins and Bab walked the dirt roads from the Imperial Valley through the Central Valley to Feather River in Sacramento, up north to the apple farms of Oregon, spreading word about the camps to newly arrived refugees who were homeless. Bab wasn't new to the fight of helping migrant workers. When she'd learned that children were harvesting walnuts at a farm near Modesto without pay, she reached out to the United Cannery, Agricultural Packing House, and Allied Workers of America in San Francisco to see if they could help her, but they turned her down. Instead, she organized a strike on her own, and ultimately the children were paid for their work. She'd also spent a night in jail after being arrested during another strike. The situation of mass migration of refugees was a political issue. It was a fight between activists, unions, and liberal newspapers who valued the camps and their purpose versus the corporate landowners and large-scale agricultural companies and conservatives who found the whole movement to be communist-leaning and anti-American. Collins, a tireless, dedicated FSA administrator, oversaw the entire camp program. He set up his first camp in Marysville in 1935 and had continued to open and run several more camps over the next few years. His vision was to create a place that would foster self-governance amongst the refugees to boost morale, a system he called democracy functioning, where refugees made democratic decisions about the place they lived through committees. Bab helped implement the project. There were 4 committees that ran the camp: the Central Governing Committee, the Entertainment Committee, the Maintenance Committee, and the Good Neighbors Committee, and an array of subcommittees offering social events, athletic contests, childcare, clubs, and a camp newsletter. Collins saw the DF groups as a training ground for creating a union for farm workers. He was immediately impressed by Bab's ease with the camp's residents. She saw who they were, people who wished only to reestablish themselves. As he wrote about Bab's work, it was she who bridged the chasm between the DF and the next move, the CIO, Congress of Industrial Organizations. It was she who raised aloft the bigger banner for the United Front. Of such stuff are the real leaders of men made. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Catamaran.
Thanks, Iris. That was beautiful. Our next reader is Eric Fisher Stone. Eric Fisher Stone is a poet from Fort Worth, Texas. He received his MFA in Writing and the Environment from Iowa State University. His list of poetry publications includes 2 full-length collections, The Providence of Grass by Chatterhouse Press in 2018 and the recent Animal Joy by Word Tech Editions in 2021. Please welcome Eric Fisher Stone.
Hi, thank you for having me. This poem is called Before Naming. It's the one that appears in the issue of Catamaran. And I just wanted to say that it has a quotation from Genesis, for better or for worse, but that explains it's about the part where Adam named the animals, and I would think that we might be better off if we didn't name animals or name things. So this is the quotation: "And Adam gave names to all cattle, and to the fowl of the air, and to every beast of the field." So this poem is called Before Naming. Puffing labels for bird, how horse and serpent, Adam's tongue tilled meaning for mystery. Before words, ants kissed pheromones, amoebas seeped like scrambled eggs, frog spawn spumed tadpoles, without phrases for water, star, God. Pterodactyl angels ripped hazards through skies. This same air, this soil, raw as a newborn's first milk, which can't be spoken, only tasted. Dragonflies mated over the plunder of slime when lightning startled earth with amazement hotter than knowledge. From throaty plugging to lipping trills, we jail the world in our mouths. The bird doesn't sort horse from hippo, snake from snail. She sings of cherries lush as almonds, the electric sky tanged with her voice. Thank you. That's it. Okay. Hello?
Thank you, Eric. That was great. I'm sorry. I thought you were going to read another poem, but that was great.
Okay. Yeah. I do have another one. I didn't know if you want, because the other people didn't read another one. I didn't know if I should or not. So. I do have another one prepared, but that's okay.
Are you sure?
Let's go. Let's just go with the next person.
Okay. Okay.
I didn't mean to crowd in. That was not me.
Yeah.
Please, Eric, if you want to share another one, please go ahead.
Well, thanks, Erin. We're
Louder.
okay.
Yeah, closer.
Yeah, we get a little closer.
Yeah.
Hi, it's a pleasure to introduce Erin Bedford. She's a writer of literary fiction and poetry. Her short work appears in Flash Fiction Magazine, Juniper, the Thames Review, Map Literary, Train, and Guest, and now Catamaran. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. So I'm going to read two poems. The first one is the one that's published in Catamaran, and it's called Clear Cut. Clear Cut. Imagine a tree built in rings, 800 wet and dry seasons etched in wood. Go back to the seed crack, sprout rooting down, branching like lightning. Tunnel those growing circumferences. Instead of the weather transcribed, you will find Eleanor of Castile dying, her king raising crosses in medieval England, one for each stopping place of her funeral parade. The slow advance of a glacier during the Little Ice Age. Suleiman the Magnificent's lines to his lover, my woman of the beautiful hair, my love of the slanted brow, my love of eyes full of misery. The beginning and then the end of the Qing dynasty, and blight and pox and war, one human owning another, poem and painting and protest, perfect souls born to the world and passed out of it, a number so great it approaches the infinite, of Ramanujan and Euler and Leibniz. Our time, a hairline. I think these things stay aloof, steadfast as the fir that began as a sapling in the 13th century, the one whose top leans and sways over the house where we, here is the crack of memory, shooting through, and now the cutting down. Okay. And the second poem I'm going to read is called Action Potential. Dad always said I should be a lawyer because of my concern for what was fair and my quick ability in arguments. I always thought I would teach like him, like Mom, too. He taught me high school anatomy. In class, we learned about the myelin sheath, that anti-conductive coating that prevents impulse leak, and neurodegenerative disease, creating bald wires and signal seep. I knew we were all these circuits and wires underneath. I'd seen the models with red and blue lines, like the looped cursive of a neon sign. I knew the heart as a bloody motor you could shock, but still I was surprised to hear of these charges slipping their path. He always thought he would play for the CFL until the problem with his knee, but I never knew about this dream until I let go a few of my own. And maybe it's the same kind of lost signal that keeps us from reaching those potentials. But I prefer to think about the dropped sparks, those tiny fires lighting up the hollow body. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
I know. Here I come. Thank you, Erin. That was
Thank you.
so lovely. I love Clear Cut. Thank you. Our next reader is Patrice Vecchione. Patrice Vecchione's book, My Shouting, Shattered, Whispering Voice, A Guide to Writing Poetry and Speaking Your Truth, was published just as the pandemic began. Her recent poem, Covered in Sugar, Thrown Carelessly, received an honorable mention by the dance company Sid Perlman Performance for the art installation Home Body. And her essay, The Interview That Adrienne Rich Never Wanted Published, was published by Literary Hub in 2020. A Walkabout Town, Vecchione's monthly column for the Monterey Herald, invites readers into local nature. Vecchione leads writing workshops for adults and children through her program, The Heart of the Word. And the collage that she writes about in her essay, These Pandemic Grays, which appears in Catamaran, is featured in a juried art exhibition of the Arts Council for Monterey County, Art in the Time of COVID-19, on display through spring of 2022 at the Monterey Health Department in Salinas. Please welcome Patrice Vecchione.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here and really delighted to be in Catamaran for the second time. Before reading you a brief excerpt from my essay, I'd like to recognize the immense contribution of Bell Hooks and to say how sad it is that she has left us too soon. Hooks wrote, "The function of art is to do more than tell it like it is. It is to imagine what is possible." These Pandemic Grays, creativity during COVID, this is the opening portion. For about 25 years, my husband and I have lived and loved in a small Delray Oaks home. We've enjoyed near nightly dinners together. Various doted upon cats have spent afternoons curled in the sun at the foot of our bed. The front yard that my office windows open to is bordered by tall bushes and a large Monterey pine that not so long ago was a tabletop Christmas tree. A tippy backyard fence encloses a garden that produces tomatoes and dahlias in summer. We welcome the outside in, closing the back door only against the coldest days. When the world shut down, our house shrank, the walls pressed in. Even with the windows open, I couldn't get enough air, and so I held my breath more than usual. Spring was only a couple of weeks off, but the leafless, budless garden appeared to have planted its faith firmly in winter. This little plot of land, the only place where we felt physically safe, yet with that came an overwhelming sense of containment. For days and days, when I ventured no distance whatsoever, The farthest my eyes could reach were the greenish hills beyond the kitchen window, land that if we'd had an actual rainy season would have been vibrant green in March. Those hills let me pretend that I lived among them, and every time I stood at the window washing a dish, that's what I did. Before lockdown, even with a full teaching schedule, I often had the house to myself for many hours each work weekday. Architect Donald Ratner said, "Our mental space stands in direct proportion to our perception of our physical space. My mental space functions best when I have regular time alone in this physical space that's decorated in bright colors with art on every wall." With both of us working from home, we were within earshot most of the time. Michael designing interiors and drawing plans for cabinets in what used to be the garage, while in my office, I learned how to teach remotely and discovered it was possible to promote a new book without opening the front door. There is no one I'd have wanted to sequester with other than my husband. Nobody is as easy on my eyes, nor as welcome in my heart, and probably nobody else would have been willing to tolerate my quirkiness. But as I've grown older, my solitary nature has grown more solitary. Before this sudden change, when working at home, I'd leave my office to throw in a load of laundry while writing in my head, confident nobody would interrupt me except the crows in the cypress tree on the other side of that slanty back fence. Hanging clothes on the line, I'd write aloud. Grating ginger and chopping carrots for dinner, I'd plan my next day's classes. Though the space in my head is not always pretty, I'm mostly comfortable with the rambling chaos there. The mulling I do alone is necessary for my work, and my work is pretty much who I am. Only in quiet can I sift through the parts of the world's complexity and destruction that my psyche has absorbed. Like a crow, I sort through the mess that's gathered before it congeals. It's taken me decades to learn I can toss out what's damaging or is more than I can manage at the moment, and tuck away the little sparkly pieces, even the scary ones, that I want to keep close or return to later. As life got narrower, due to a virus we didn't understand, the unknowns crashing and toppling over the knowns, even with my immeasurable good fortune, on some days I felt unhinged by the direness of the situation. Things were actually falling apart. The center hadn't held. And hadn't many of us been holding our breath, anticipating something? The years-long sense of impending disaster had only intensified during Trump's reign. It's difficult to live easily with systematic incongruency and dishonesty. For science to not only be disrespected, but for it to be not believed. For the climate to be in desperate trouble, meaning we're in desperate trouble, but for right actions to not be taken, despite warning after warning, is like living in an alcoholic family, only on a worldwide scale. Undone by fear and enclosure, louder than at any other time, the natural world, wide sky, delicate whir of hummingbirds, large oak trees that remind me of women lifting full skirts over their heads, letting me linger over their beautiful brown legs, and wind-pressed grasses began calling me out. Thank you so much. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrice. Well, our next reader is Brad Shurmantine. We learned of Brad when he attended the Catamaran conference last summer. He lives in Napa, California, where he writes, reads, tends 3 gardens, sand, water, and vegetable, 5 chickens, 2 cats, and 2 beehives. His fiction and essays have appeared in Monday Night, Flint Hills Review, and Deep Wild. His poetry in Third Wednesday, Cacti Fur, and Blue Lake Review. He backpacks in the Sierra, travels when he can, and prefers George Eliot to Charles Dickens or almost anyone. Please welcome Brad Shurmantine.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you everybody for being here. So this story is about a funny little boy. It's called Daredevil, and I'm going to read the first couple pages. Gary had no artistic talent at all, but he tried drawing superheroes. He and his best friend Louis were Marvel snobs. They spent their lunchtimes inventing these superheroes. The first one they came up with was Captain Galactic. There's already Captain America, Louis pointed out. Let's call him Sergeant Solar. Sergeants are stupid. Captains are way cooler, Gary insisted. He's going to be a captain. It was his idea after all. Captain Galactic was a PG&E worker who got blown off his lift into massive power lines and filled with 100,000 volts of electricity. But instead of being killed, he became a superhero because he had a little rock in his pocket, a little meteorite he had picked up on his travels. The Galacnite absorbed the electricity and transformed Jonas Jensen into a superhero. His power was channeling electricity. He could shoot electric bolts out of his hands and stun villains. Gary found the lightning bolts easy to depict. But then they gave Captain Galactic the ability to become incandescent and glow and blind villains. That was not easy to depict, and the boys moved on to Beetleman. Beetleman was a nerdy scientist who got bit by a strange beetle from the Amazon. He had beetle strength and beetle sense. You know how roaches always run away when you try to kill them, Gary explained? That's beetle sense. Beetleman had metal wings attached to some motor so he could fly. His wings could swivel around in front of him in a flash and deflect bullets. Louis was supposed to be the story guy, but he was only good at suggesting girlfriends for Beetleman. Give her short brown hair like Kathy Little, he coached, standing behind Gary and breathing down his neck. Make her cute like Kathy. Gary was concentrating, but what he drew looked like a frisbee with fur. You like Kathy? He asked Louis suspiciously. Yeah, I like Kathy. Well, I like her. Well, I like her too, Louis smartly retorted, effectively ending their artistic collaboration. He had no story ideas anyway. The pressure of doing all the artwork and the stories grew too great for Gary. Plus, it was baseball season. His artistic career ended when he was 10. But he remained infatuated with superheroes. He especially liked Daredevil because Daredevil was just an ordinary blind guy named Matt Murdock who trained hard. Yeah, he had special senses that compensated for his blindness, but he had no real advantage over the bad guys, nothing God-given. Nothing that a little boy like Gary couldn't acquire if he worked out every single day in his basement and taught himself how to fight. His mom had bought a piece of workout equipment to help her boys stay strong, a freestanding chinning bar, and stuck it down in the basement next to the player piano and the washing machine. No one used it but Gary. Gary would disappear down in the basement for hours. He'd do a few chin-ups, then he would pretend he was fighting bad guys using daredevil moves. He'd run and jump and grab the chinning bar and swing his legs forward. Pow! Take that, Tom Williamson. He'd knock out the bad guy. Or he would spin around the vertical pole in various daredevil ways, delivering devastating blows with his feet or fists or elbows, flattening bad guys who were shocked at his speed and agility. Daredevil had a billy club, so Gary made himself one out of an old broomstick he found in the garage. It was actually not an old broomstick. It was a quite functional broomstick attached to a functional broom, but Gary took his dad's rusty handsaw and turned it into an old broomstick and a billy club. His mom was not pleased. But the billy club added infinite variety to Gary's training routines. He practiced throwing the billy club at the bad guys with deadly accurate aim, catching them right on the bridge of the nose, stunning them so Gary could quickly move in and finish them off with a kick to the chin or a karate chop to the side of the neck. Plus, he could just wallop them with the billy club in his hand. Gary practiced countless ways of holding the billy club and inflicting pain on bad guys. Unfortunately, Gary's Billy Club did not have all the gizmos that Daredevil's Billy Club had. Gary couldn't fly from building to building using the special line and pulley mechanism that Matt Murdock invented and somehow packed into his club. But that was all fantasy anyway. That's it. Thank you very much. All right.
Okay, thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
We're clapping.
Yeah.
Woo. We were so engrossed we forgot to turn ourselves back on
Yeah.
the screen. Okay. So yes, bravo. Our next reader is Connie Hills. And Connie Hills was born in California and has lived most of her life near the Pacific Ocean. Hills' poems have appeared in Red Wheelbarrow, Red Rock Review, Porter Gulch Review, The Bark, San Diego Poetry Annual, and Soul Making in the Valley of the Shadow, an anthology by Deep River Poets. She was nominated for a Pushcart Prize. She currently lives in Seaside, California, with her wife and their dog. So let's welcome Connie Hills. Yay, there she is.
Hello.
Hello. Good, we got you. Okay.
Okay, here we are on Chrome. Thank you for coming out, everybody. And thank you to Catamaran for inviting me to read. I'm going to read two poems, one from Catamaran. It's on page 130 for those of you who have the magazine with you, and it's called Poppins-esque. And the second poem I'm going to read is a poem that I wrote earlier. Poppins-esque. On the asphalt path, I walk my dog, listening to hawks scream and ravens bark, listening to wind chimes ring. And from the cool mist, I hear what could be Marie Callas singing an aria. Then I see her, a broad ash blonde woman in mucklucks, long wide skirt, sweater, blue hooded jacket, ambling sideways, packed like a mule. Large rucksack, saddles of stuffed sacks, rolled tarps, arms stretched downward, linked to a gaggle of kids holding hands. Singing a choral in perfect pitch, she leads them past tennis courts, chin-up bars, men sitting at green tables playing radios and drinking from brown paper bags. And the children follow her like sheep. Away from the sandbox, swings and slides, into a labyrinth of leptospermum trees. Barely seen by a passerby, boys play Star Wars and girls huddle in secret circles. I return in the wet season, find her standing in a damp, grassy field behind the thick skin of a lemon raincoat, singing at the top of her lungs. Valgary, Valgara, Valgara, ha, 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 drowning out the swish of cars barreling down Park Presidio, the whirring engine of the leaf blower. So I wrote that poem after seeing a woman in Mountain Lake Park in the Presidio every day, and she just fascinated me. The next poem I'm going to read is called Last Dance, and this was written way before the pandemic when you could go visit somebody in the hospital and you could have as many people in the room as you wanted, and you could have pizza and nobody was wearing a mask, and it was a very tender moment with a dear, dear friend of mine. It's called Last Dance. In room 656A she lay, her body now pencil thin, wisps of hair on her head. She vigorously brushed her teeth, spitting mouthfuls of water into the pink plastic crescent moon dish, then asked us to moisturize her skin. We lathered up our fingers and hands with tubes of Eucerin. Anju began, fingertips on forehead, Mira her right forearm, me the left. In 20 years, I never really touched her. As her brown skin sucked in softness, her head nodded in delight. She lifted her arms and pointed for us to add pressure, kneed her calves, and pointed for us to uncurl her gnarled ballerina feet. I slid my arm to her belly, let the palm of my hand slow dance in spirals. She gently moved the cotton blankets away to fully spread her legs open, now insisting I stroke her inner thighs. Facing all of her, I massaged those strong muscles, the ones I saw her use one wild karaoke night when she leapt across benches, her tiny frame bouncing to dragon dance drum beats, arms undulating through air, her long black ponytail cascading down her spine. Then she pointed to her small mound. I looked for her husband. He stood 1 foot behind the vinyl curtain, frozen in amazement, shaking his head in helplessness. But I loved seeing her drink the last droplets of pleasure from this world as she slid down the arc of ecstasy, taking as much as she could. Thank you. And thank you, Brad, for that story. The second half of that story was pulled a punch. So for those of you who haven't read it, you're gonna enjoy it.
Thank you, Connie. Beautiful poems. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. And did anyone see the catamaran bag she has hanging on her background? Yeah.
There we go.
There it is. Okay. All right. Thanks, Connie.
Thank you.
Well, our next reader is Gary Young. And besides having a piece of Gary's in the magazine this issue, we also have a fantastic interview with him that Maggie Paul did, Eruptions of Tenderness. But for now, here's Gary. Gary Young has been awarded grants from the National Endowment for the Arts and the National Endowment for the Humanities. He's received a Pushcart Prize, and his book of poems, The Dream of a Moral Life, won the James D. Phelan Award. He is the author of several other collections of poetry, including Hands, Days, Braver Deeds, which was the winner of the Peregrine Smith Poetry Prize, No Other Life, which was the winner of the William Carlos Williams Award, Pleasure, and Even So, New and Selected Poems. His most recent books are That's What I Thought, winner of the Lexi Rudnitsky Editor's Choice Award, and Precious Mirror, translations of Kobun Otagawa from the Japanese. In 2009, he received the Shelley Memorial Award from the Poetry Society of America. He teaches creative writing and directs the Cowell Press at the University of California, Santa Cruz. Here's Gary. I hope here's Gary.
No, he's coming.
Oh, good.
There he is.
There. There.
Yay.
All right. Well, thank you, Elizabeth, for that wonderful introduction and for yet another glorious issue of Catamaran. And congratulations, Catherine, on your first decade. It's really quite an accomplishment. I'm going to read 3 short poems. The first one appears in the new issue of Catamaran, and the other 2 are from a work in progress, American Analects. This book revolves around old friends, and in particular, my dear friend and mentor, Gene Holton, who died about 5 years ago. All three of these poems, including the first one that appears in Catamaran, are about Jean. Jean believed that there's virtue in being incidental and embracing the achieved accident of who you are. I'm not so sure. Fruit ripening on the branches of the apricot and plum promise sweetness, and it's easy to forget that within each tender fruit, there's a stone at its core. Jean said, it's impossible to be honest with yourself. It isn't achievable for anyone. The world is incomprehensible, and our defenses defeat us. I asked him, is there anything we can believe in? Of course, he said, but it should be arbitrary. He gazed out the window. Ah, clouds. Each moment blossoms, stutters, and takes its place in the past. Bees sip water from the moss at the edge of a pond. Scarlet oaks tremble in a breeze. Night falls. I held Jean's hand while he was dying. He fell asleep, and when he woke, his mouth tightened and he started to cry. He didn't cry because he was dying. He cried because I was there and would have to watch him die. Outside, the sea was going up in flames. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Gary. Lovely. Always a pleasure to have you in the magazine.
Always a pleasure to be there. Thank you.
Another poet is coming up next. Our next reader is Farnaz Fatemi. Farnaz Fatemi's book of poems, Sister Tongue, won the 2021 Wick Poetry Prize and will be published in 2022 by Kent State University. She lives in Santa Cruz, California. So please welcome Farnaz Fatemi. You can clap.
Yeah.
Who is connecting. So you guys can remember to comment in the chat. And there's even emojis, like you can do the clappy hands. So we can hear you, how you feel about what you just heard, even though we don't have a live audience. Okay, I'm going to redo you, Farnaz. No worries, we'll get you on. Okay, so you need to accept right now.
There we go.
There she is. Please welcome, once again, please welcome Farnaz Fatemi.
Thank you. Sorry about that delay. I don't know why I couldn't get on. I'm going to read two poems, and I'm going to, because I got distracted by the technical stuff, a happy 10th. I'm really excited that Catamaran's been around for 10 years, and I look forward to the next 10. I'm going to read two poems, and one of them is not in the magazine. I'll start with that one. It's called Diorama, and it's rather fresh. There was no warning. I was 8. I carried home a box which held the planets I had made from clay, turned in my fingers and smoothed with my palms, plotted from the sun in the box's corner, and hung each from thread. I want to say the boy showed up on his bike, or maybe my sister and I came on him, leaning over his handlebars. I can't quite make that fit. What's in that stupid box? Did I clutch it too close? How could cardboard make anyone proud? He saw me, but that's all I remember about him. What remains is the way it all changed. I can tell you now how well I'd hung the planets, and that the diorama worked to show how our little Earth hung among the others. But when he shoved the box instead of me, though I knew what he wanted was to hurt another person, the thread of each celestial body tangled together with such force that they stayed knotted up, and no one who tried, not even my mother, could pull them back apart. And I'm going to read the poem from the magazine, which is called Disturbance Regime, and it's an ecological term. And it's basically the force that creates new flora in a place. So it could be flood, fire, climate change, but it causes repopulation of an area. And this is from my friend Veronica Flanagan, who passed away 2 years ago Monday. She leaves abruptly, so everyone else needs to rearrange themselves, register her missingness, look at each other freshly, notice the lines of age they hadn't noticed. What muscles do they need now to go on? How should their bodies move, their voices sound at this unmapped crossing, as after a fire when grasses are seared back to nubs, seed pods, scattered, toast down, dirt darkens to charcoal. The newly denuded hillside summons a hierarchy of regrowth, seeds taking hold to start something. Uncalendared, the uninhabited body draws new things in with its absences. The world relocates itself around the space left behind, makes different sounds, listens for what she used to say, how she would have said it. But that is gone too. They hear a rustling in the air, linger. I'm really grateful to read that poem during this week. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Farnaz.
Yeah. Okay. Well, our next reader is Christopher Urban, and he's going to read from his short story in the magazine Cafe Sequoia. Christopher has written for the Three Penny Review, N+1, Columbia Journal, the Paris Review Daily, and the Los Angeles Review of Books. Grew up in Ohio and was educated at Case Western Reserve University. He lives in Brooklyn, New York. Please welcome Christopher Urban.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to read from Cafe Sequoia. Delighted to be in this issue, and I originally wrote the story, a draft of it, when I was in Northern California, perhaps after drinking too much wine, and certainly drunk on the Arabian Nights or 1001 Tales, because there's a kind of stories within stories within stories is the theme of the story. But it's going to read in the middle here. The Cafe Sequoia takes its name from the cafe where the narrator, instead of sort of participating in the winery festivities, just goes to the same cafe, drinking coffee all day and critiquing the journals that he wished would publish him. So at the moment, though, he's writing. When the breeze blew hard enough that early evening, I could hear the sounds of laughter and the clinking of glasses from the winery up the road. These joyous sounds had annoyed me yesterday, but not now. No, now that I was writing again, I met them with delight, as if the cheerful crowd had gathered together on the hillside in my honor. I gave another minute, lingering in my daydreams, before I took out my phone and texted Catherine, on my way. Back at the hotel, I took a quick shower and got ready in no time. We had a lovely dinner at an Italian restaurant that evening. They served the bread right on the table, no plates or baskets, nothing. That's how authentic it was, like we were really in Italy. But we weren't so far away, just California. Still, the 3-hour time change was enough to make us sleepy, and we didn't even bother with dessert that night, nor did we make love when we got back to the hotel as I hoped we would. Instead, we both fell asleep around 9 o'clock on the king-size bed, facing each other on our sides. Catherine had to get up extra early to get the most out of her free all-day spa pass at a wellness center in the little downtown area about 20 minutes from here. Her time slot was so early because she was scheduled to conduct a live stream interview on East Coast time with the proprietor, who was a leading figure in the small business world. Catherine could probably have hooked me up with a free pass too, she said, as long as I agreed to appear in a few of the posts or photos. While I did have a lingering basketball-related injury in my shoulder that could no doubt benefit from a little massage therapy, I politely declined. No thanks, I said, trying to conceal my distaste for the vanity of selfies and social media, but I wasn't entirely successful. My reluctance to be photographed, a rite of passage in today's relationships, had caused a bit of a tiff between us, not for the first time. "You think you're freaking Thomas Pynchon or something." At least Catherine was smiling when she said it. She looked amazing in her purple summer dress, her dark hair pulled back in one thick braid, and a gold necklace with some kind of horseshoe-shaped pendant dangling below her throat. "I wish," I said. After I dropped her off that morning at the spa, I didn't hesitate to return to Cafe Sequoia in the hopes that being in the same atmosphere would prove as fruitful to my imagination as it did during yesterday's writing session, when I'd actually composed a consecutive string of original, if only by default, sentences about the old man's life. Ah, yes, with just a magical touch of the pen, I made him a retired maritime lawyer who'd recently lost his dog of 14 years to pass the time in his elderly days. He was working on a heavily researched historical novel set during the Napoleonic Wars concerning a fictitious British spy who doubles as an undercover assistant cook on a soon-to-be-captured French battleship. But the old man was wasting too much time researching sailing vessels and playing online solitaire, and not putting forth enough effort in writing the damn thing. Although I was worried the setup of my story might send me down a path every bit as mawkish as some of the more mediocre stories contained within the journals I read the other day, a perverse compulsion compelled me to continue with it. As I pulled up into the cafe's parking lot across the road, I was not surprised to see the old man sitting at a sunny spot on the bench overlooking the sea. Despite the heat, he was still wearing that ugly canary yellow cardigan that made me want to sweat just looking at it. In his hand, he held a flimsy, environmentally friendly paper cup. I could see the steam coming off the coffee in the distance. After I ordered a drink of my own, I headed towards the elevated bench seating area that overlooked the vast bluish-green waters, where stacks of emerged rocks occasionally broke up the constant waves into foamy white explosions. The old man looked different to me in the morning sunlight. He didn't appear like a subject who escaped sitting for his portrait just long enough to enjoy some port or ale or whatever it was they drank centuries ago. No, he looked younger, contemporary even, of the here and now. He even reminded me of myself for some reason. That morning we actually spoke. Not a long conversation exactly, but we did exchange a few brief words, commenting on the unmatchable ocean views in front of us and the fine coffee served here at Cafe Sequoia. I asked him if he tried the cold brew yet, and he shook his head no in a disgusted manner. "Coffee's meant to be a hot drink," he said to me with a scorn, like I was a child who didn't know any better. Thank you.
Thanks, Christopher.
Thanks so much.
Great. Great story. Okay, we're down to the last two, I guess. Our next reader is Barbara Bloom. Barbara Bloom lived in Santa Cruz, California for 45 years, and she taught English and creative writing at Cabrillo College. She's published 2 books of poetry, and her work has appeared in various magazines, including Raven Chronicles, Frenzy, and previously in Catamaran. She now lives in Bellingham, Washington, among tall trees, very tame deer, and lots of rain. Please welcome Barbara Bloom.
Great. Thank you. And thank you so much for letting me be part of this, one of the beauties of the internet. And I've so enjoyed the reading, and thank you all for being here. I'm going to read 2 poems. The first is not in the magazine, and the second one is the one that Catamaran published. The first poem is called Waterfall Parks. And it takes place in 2 waterfall parks Yosemite National Park, California, and Whatcom Falls Park, Washington. First, there were the waterfalls we journeyed to with our parents. After sitting hot and cramped in the back seat for hours, so glad to be released from the car, even if it meant another photo, my father lining us up on the low stone wall, Bridal Veil Falls in the background, telling us to move closer together, to smile. Or one I keep remembering, 19 years old, shivering under the spray of lower Yosemite Falls, and a man I just met taking off his jacket, wrapping it around me, everything that would follow contained in that gesture, that even now I recall. Cold glitter of the water in the moonlight, his hands on my shoulders, the chill. 1,000 miles north, Whatcom Falls spills over the rocks, spray stirring the moss. And as I stand on the bridge, warm hat pulled down, it's hard to turn away, as if the message one had been waiting for one's whole life was about to be delivered at any moment, if only one could stay for it. And this poem is called Memory of Orcas, and this is the one that's in Catamaran. There's a whir suddenly, just offshore, 5 or 6 of them, leaping, arcing, splashing back down, sleek and perfect in their black and white bodies. But it was their breathing, the huge breaths they'd exhale when they broke through the surface, water to air, one world to another, that we'd never forget. Gathered on the rocky point, we watched them, so near we could almost touch them. And at each breath of theirs, we'd shout out, not even knowing we had, as if something from deep below, perhaps the very center of the earth, was being brought up and revealed to us, huge and important, then gone, before we could understand what it was. And when finally they swam together out into the sound and out of our sight, we felt the emptiness where they had been as we turned back to our smaller human lives, trying to recall what tasks had so absorbed us before. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
Now we go from orcas to more sea creatures. With our grand finale.
Well, it's a pleasure to introduce both Charles Hood and Rowan O'Neill for the grand finale. Charles will be reading from his piece in the magazine. He's a frequent Catamaran contributor. His latest book is A Salad Only the Devil Would Eat, The Joys of Ugly Nature, published just recently by Heyday. And we recently hosted Charles in conversation with Jonathan Franzen here in Santa Cruz at the launch of the book. So a field guide to reptiles and amphibians will be out soon. Timber Press, as if that weren't enough. Charles will be reading the musical accompaniment. His partner will be Rowan O'Neill, and he should be on any moment. Shall I go ahead and introduce Rowan now?
Yeah.
Rowan enjoys writing, historical fencing, and composing music in the Baroque style. He also plays Baroque violin and harpsichord. He recently engraved the vocal score of Handel's Messiah, adapted with an introduction by Nicholas McGeegan for a new limited edition published by Orion Press in San Francisco. So, please welcome Charles and Rowan.
Hey, everybody. It's an honor to be here with an amazing issue 10 years, yay. May we all be back to see the 20-year version in 20 years. And yes, I am going to be doing a very brief portion of an essay about seals and memory and all kinds of silly topics, but the highlight of it will be 2 performances by Rowan. So we pick up the narrative in the middle of the essay. We're talking about all the ways that the 19th century interacted with marine mammals, particularly in the California coast. One special part of the California Ocean is La Virgen, the ghost seal of Guadalupe. To understand this one, we have to remember that in the 19th century, we didn't just try to kill all the sea otters. We didn't just go after all the sperm whales and the blue whales and the right whales, but for boiling blubber into oil, we went hard after the elephant seals. And for pelts, we went after the northern fur seal, which has marketable pelt, hence the term fur seal. And it once had a population in the tens and tens and tens of thousands. They were hunted everywhere in the North Pacific, from Japan to Alaska to Monterey. And in California, the northern fur seals were chased and shot and gaffed and clubbed all the way down to the very last one. That was it. Gone, dead, wiped out. Elvis has left the building. Turn on the house lights and start sweeping up. That, ladies and gentlemen, is all she wrote. And yet, nature finds a way, and some random northern fur seals made it from Alaska to the Channel Islands in the 1960s, and from there back north to the Farallones. And the northern fur seal now breeds in California on the Farallones off of San Francisco. But the other fur seal that was here and killed and skinned, but almost without anyone realizing that it existed, was La Virgen, the Guadalupe fur seal, the ghost seal, the Virgin, La Virgen de Guadalupe, as in the seal blessed by the Virgin Mary from the Isla de Guadalupe, which is a strange black volcano 150 miles off the coast of Mexico, stuck way out in the unknown Pacific. In 1897, that seal was down to the last few wild individuals. And in the same year, 1897, it was finally identified to science by Seahart Miriam using skulls found on the beach. And I'll just back up a tiny bit that there were a few live fur seals, Guadalupe fur seals, that they tried to shoot and they got away. And so they took some bones and then they described it to science. But by 1900, no further sightings. The population was presumed extinct. So we named it in science in the same year that it went extinct, or so people thought. 1928, 2 male seals captured by fishermen in Mexico sold to the San Diego Zoo. 1929, they die. So now we think they're extinct again. And now we come to Rowan's moment of history. 1949, we're sure the seals are gone now, but there's a male Guadalupe fur seal seen and photographed by a biologist censusing a sea lion colony on St. Nicholas Island, California. Is it the last one? Could there be more? San Nicolas is part of the Channel Islands, along with Catalina, which is the one that's big and close to Los Angeles, Bison Herds, Wrigley Mansion, part of the same chain that has Santa Cruz Island with the cute foxes and the Nature Conservancy signs. But it's the far one, the unknown one, the one you can't see from shore even on a good day. Lots of stuff could be out there on San Nicolas. We'd never know. I want you to think about being that biologist. He's landed by boat. He's surrounded by the regular expected kind of animal, the California sea lions. There's gulls swirling and complaining around his head. He's alone on the rocks. The waves are crashing. And then he spots it, the ghost seal, the one only known by rumor, described from the skulls on the beach, thought dead many times over from 1900 all the way to now. What did that biologist feel when he found that fur seal, the ghost seal? What did he hear in his mind? What did he hear in his real senses? What did he try to convey telling the stories to others? Rowan will take us on that journey through the magic of his music. 1949, The Ghost Seal, Rowan.
Okay, so normally what we do is we have some animal sounds, which I then respond to. So I have prepared 2 animals that I think would have been in this area. The first is the sea lion. So let's just hear from a sea lion. Okay, let's see what I can do with that. So some of them I notice they go up, go what, but then some of them they do the opposite. They go and one of them will go and the other will go So now I can have two sea lions talking to each other. Okay, so there you have your sea lion theme. Now let's hear a seagull. So the seagulls, I notice, only like to go up, and they're a little bit higher, much higher, I'd say, than the sea lions. And I also notice they like to speed up. And I notice that sometimes when they speed up fast enough, they stop singing two notes or a slide between two notes, and they sort of just settle on one of them. So there you have your seagull theme. And now when Charles described this to me, he talked about the excitement that the biologist would feel in finding this seal. And so Charles was talking about the heartbeat of the biologist. And so for the heartbeat, we have just a rhythm. So if we put all three of those together, I think that I can conjure the animals and the scene, and then the heartbeat of the excitement of the biologist, and then to represent the hope and surprise at finding this previously thought to be extinct animal, I can resolve finally into major.
I just have to deviate from my reading text, which I'm about to come back to. Rowan wrote that in the last hour. We didn't have a time to rehearse because I've been in Oman and the United Arab Emirates. I just flew in last night. So we were rehearsing right before showtime. So that's just astounding. I'll just want to read the last paragraph of the piece and then ask Rowan to take us out. to Pluto. As a matter of fact, in the way that Catamaran lets me be, we go from the oceans to outer space because the piece does. Earth has a lot of seas, of course, so I'm picking up the narrative at the very end. From the Pacific Ocean to the Arctic Ocean to a place I was in just a few days ago, the Arabian Sea between Oman and the Horn of Africa. It may take a while, but if we all live long enough, there are more seas coming. Jupiter's moon, Ganymede, almost certainly has an immense saltwater ocean waiting under the ice. Dwarf planet Ceres shows potential as well for subterranean water. Saturn's moon Enceladus, warmed and kneaded by the tidal flux of giant Saturn, doesn't just have subsurface oceans. It has so much water under so much pressure that geysers shoot into space in 100-mile tall plumes, which freeze in midair and fall back as snow. That constant relayering helps make it the cleanest, whitest object in the solar system. On Enceladus, under that protective coating of ice, there's evidence that the entire moon may be covered in one globally contiguous ocean. Similarly, Jupiter's Europa may have so much water under its ice that if the math is right, it holds twice as much water as all of Earth's oceans combined. Even distant and lonely Pluto may possess a liquid ocean beneath its frozen shell. What lives in these dark, unvisited, under-the-ice aquatic worlds? What demons and sea monsters, what seals and seal-eating hunters await our discovery? The last time Anglo-European voyagers encountered a brave new world, they promptly tried to extirpate the wildlife and enslave and contaminate the indigenous people. Habits have changed. Sea otters now look at us with curiosity or indifference, but never fear. When we go to the next ocean, the next new shore, this time around, maybe we can be better stewards, kinder guests, quieter note takers, and more generous neighbors. This time, just maybe, we can finally get it right.
Okay, so starting from Neptune, I will assign a note to all the planets and then eventually arrive at the sun. And then I will only improvise on those notes. So we start on A, Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Earth, Venus, Mercury, and the Sun.
Thank you, Rowan. That was amazing.
Thanks, Rowan.
Okay, everyone. That ends our launch celebration. Cheers.
Cheers.
I hope you all have a happy holiday season, and I hope we kicked off your holidays in a good way. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to buy the winter issue of Catamaran. Good night.
Good night.